thanks. So we can go ahead and start because I don't ever interview anyone, and so I'm not good at it. And if we've watched your video, you'll know that I'm not good at talking to people or doing any of that social stuff. So this is all new to me. This might be the first interview I've ever conducted. So
Really?
yeah, I don't know who would I. It's funny. It's like I read interviews all the time, and I'm like, oh boy, these are the questions I would ask. Or when I get interviewed, I'll get questions sometimes, and it's like I'll just delete some, or
Yeah.
I'll give an answer that's for a different question just because it's a better whatever.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, it's weird. It sucks being on this side. I don't like it.
I was about to say, you just gave me license to delete questions. So,
Yeah, you can do whatever you want. You can just ignore it, awkwardly sit there and ignore the question.
okay, we'll have to
Funny.
try that out.
All right. Yeah, so I did a little bit of research on you just because
Uh-oh.
it's funny is like we're I don't know how long I've known you, but we talk, but we we never get to sit down and just like one on one and anything, and
Yeah.
and what's funny to me is like I've looked back at my career and I've worked with like Chris Staros, and Mike Richardson, Dan Didio, um, uh, who am I forgetting another big one, and Bob Streck,
Ross,
and it's
Ross Richie.
right, and it's funny, and now you or whatever, and it's like and it's and I was just trying to think of parallels or things you guys have in common and everything, and it's like I don't know, you guys are all so different, so
Yeah.
very different. Um, but like to me, then my first question is because this is the question I've asked all of those guys is like, well, why comics? Like you're smart, you know business, you understand like how the world works, and
Yeah.
you chose comics. So there's something wrong with you, and I just want to know what it is.
Well, that's a perfectly valid question. And I mean, it sounds funny, but it's true. And I don't have an answer that makes any sense. And so I would say sort of your career and my career are different in that to a certain degree, I kind of fell into this in a way that you were always focused and dedicated. So I'll give you some quick sort of articulate a few points and speed through them. I read my first comic when I'm 6. It's like a brick through the eye, between my eyes. It absolutely blows me away. I had a Fantastic Four 176, and I remember, at 6 years old, looking at the corner box and thinking, if there's 175 before this, I have to read them all. And so I was instantly, reading and then, reading everything. And, my family had a vacation house down on the coast in Texas, and there was, nothing to do. And so I would go down to the Circle K and every day, basically, I bought everything on the rack just to entertain myself. And and then I'm hardcore very quick. And then from that, I sort of I painted and drew in school. And so my classmates, when I go back to the reunion, they're all like, "Hey, how's the painting career going?" Because I was the guy at my school that was known for doing that. And I went to the University of Texas as a painting and drawing major, but then my second year decided to change and become a film major. And so I got entranced with that. I moved out to LA to do a career in film and TV. And I'm kicking around for like a year and a half and living on my credit cards. And I have a lot of great experiences that are a lot of fun working on the production track. But I go to a convention, I'm out of work, and I go to a convention and a guy strikes up a conversation with me. And I basically get offered a job and to work in comics, and that was to work at Malibu Comics. And I needed to pay my bills, and I loved comics, but I never envisioned it as a career. And so I work at Malibu. Marvel buys them. Marvel puts Malibu out of business. I quit to go back to the movie business before it's all over, and I saw myself as a movie guy. And so I eventually become Arnold Schwarzenegger's reader of all things. And but now I'm 30, and I met a girl and she's cute and I got to settle down, and what am I going to do with my life? And I had sold things as a producer at that point. I had optioned comic books to set them up at studios as a producer, but nothing had got turned into a movie. And when it gets turned into a movie, you actually can pay your bills. And so I was sitting there kind of living paycheck to paycheck with no real uh, focus on what was going to be next. And that's when I got a call from Keith Giffen, who is one of my original inspirations, one of my favorite creators. And we'd struck up a friendship through the years, and he offered an opportunity to write an image book. And I told him I wasn't a writer, and we did the book. He refused to let me deny being the writer of the comic. And and I warned him, but then when he wouldn't listen, I said, okay, well, here's the deal. When I suck, you get to rewrite me, which he did because I sucked. And
What
I
book
told
was
him,
it? Which
what's
book
that?
was it? What book was it?
It's
The,
called, it was called Dominion, and it was launched the same time as Invincible.
okay.
And so
Yeah.
there was a spate of, it was like Fire Breather, Invincible. There was Venture by Jay Farber,
Hmm.
and Dominion. There was a clutch of books that Image published at that time. And so I did that. And then out of that conversation, um, the guy who inked the second issue, his name was Dave Elliott, is Dave Elliott. And Dave Elliott had a publishing outfit in the late 80s, which was one of my favorite independent publishers, that was called Atomica, Atomek. And they had done these huge anthologies, which had some of the best creators in the world. It was like Alan Moore and Barry Windsor Smith. And, the hot young Turks that were in that book, those books were like Grant Morrison and Garth Ennis. And, Dave was like, hey, I'm looking to revive Atomica. And I was like, oh, wow. Now I had known, because I worked at Malibu, I knew a ton of people. And so I said, oh, I'll call around and see who would want to publish it. And nobody bit. And so, I didn't realize this at this point. This is like one of these things that takes you a minute to figure out. But my dad was an entrepreneur, and his dad was an entrepreneur, and my mom was an entrepreneur. She had started her own business. And so after, I thought the thing was a slam dunk, and after calling everybody about Atomica and nobody biting, like the first project was to republish, Alan Moore had a series called the Bo Jeffries Saga.
Oh
So the
yeah.
first thing is to republish the Bo Jeffries Saga. It's like, do you want to publish Alan Moore? It's like, there's no way you're going to lose money, right? And so I just said to Dave, I'll do it. And so I didn't think of it as anything other than, my perspective was, I'm going to do this cool thing. And I'm already got my professional credentials, either as a producer or as a guy that used to work for Malibu. When I go to conventions, I go to the professional bar and hang out with all my friends in the business that are my buddies. And it'll just be a thing where I'll be like, hey, remember that time I published those cool Atomica projects? And I did that, and it worked. And so, first of all, to publish and to not fail is huge, you know.
Yeah.
And I kind of just put my toe in and didn't expect more. And then Keith came to town, and Keith really laid into me and was like, you need to be a publisher. Like, you need to go do your own thing. And the Atomica guys are great, but you need to, basically launch your own company. And I remember telling Keith, like, Atomica has a brand. People know what that is. They published Alan Moore. Nobody knows who I am. And, Keith basically fed me beer until I started Boom. And it really,
The best comic book ideas happen.
yeah, yeah. No, it was a Saturday night in a little dive bar in LA. And
I
because
remember the Bo Jeffries, were those square bound with like nice paper? Those are the editions? I remember I was working in a comic shop when those came out, and I remember buying those, and they were really well done. I
yeah,
didn't know. Yeah. Anyway, good job.
thank you. Well, and so I just really backed into, sort of publishing comics. And the funny thing is all the people that are near and dear to me, when they found out that I was doing that, they were like, well, that makes sense. They were like, well, how long did it take you to
Right.
figure that out?
You're the last one to realize.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
No, that's funny. You skipped over so much stuff with Malibu and everything else. So I don't know what you want to talk about, but
I'll talk
um,
about it all.
I was looking at, yeah, because I looked up. Because when you mentioned Malibu, I was like, I looked that up today because I was like, I was buying, because I'm just like a few years behind you, so I was still like in fan mode, buying up everything, and buying like Bone #1 was coming out, and like I
Yep.
remember, uh, the Ultraverse and everything, and trying to think, there was another one I was trying to remember, Innovation Comics. Do you remember
Yeah,
Innovation? Yeah,
very
I
clear
looked that
stuff.
up today, but it was like that era where, and I had started to, I was going to shop with my brother every week and everything, and it's like you didn't, if they didn't order it, you didn't get it. But we started buying or getting the catalog, whatever it was. It was
Previews.
previews back then still. Yeah, but I remember I would, and then that's how me and my brother just started like finding all these books, like all I think they were ordering like Innovation Malibu. They were ordering those, so we were getting those, but all these other ones that we were finding, because there was a huge boom, of
Yeah.
all comics back in the day. It was like, I remember looking at Malibu's rank. I don't know what they were ranked, but it was like, they were like high up in the top 100 comic book publishers. I was like, there were 100 comic book publishers. How?
Well, and let's tell the story. There were 18 distributors.
Yeah, yeah, that's what's crazy, And it was like I was still a fan that I didn't really realize all that was happening at the time, but you were in it, like in that was a crazy time to be in comics, like the publishing
Oh,
side.
it was staggering. That era, and in particular Malibu, was such a magical place and did so much for me. One of the things I would bracket this with is I went to the 20th reunion of Malibu, and we were all hanging out at a restaurant. It wasn't a fan event, it was just the ex-employees, right?
Yeah,
And so the editor in chief turns to me. Now, I worked in the marketing department. Okay. So just in the context is, there were basically three guys that ran the company. There was Chris Olm, who was the editor in chief. There was Tom Mason, who was the creative director and also became the marketing guy. And then there was Dave Ulbrich, who's the publishing. And they reported up to Scott Rosenberg, who owned the company. Okay. And so um, Chris Olm, who was not my boss, turned to me and said, hey, Ross, I always like, and then I forgot who he said. It was like Tom, Dick, or Harry. I always like this guy. I always like Matt. Use the word. So I always like Matt better than you. Right. And I was like, oh, really, Chris? Why was it that you like Matt better than me? And he was like, well, I would tell Matt to go do something and he'd go do it. But I would tell you, and you would ask me, what was the publishing strategy? Why did we think like that? What were we trying to accomplish? And, could we meet those goals in a more unorthodox way? And, I didn't know that I was, deconstructing and sort of dissecting um, the who, what, when, where, and why of the publishing. But clearly, those were all things that I used at Boom later. And the funny story within the story of being hired at Malibu is that when I was at that convention, and I'll break that scene down a little bit more, here I am with a film school degree. Okay. And I'm at a convention and I walk up to the Malibu booth and they have this huge TV wall and it was showing one of the Ultraverse characters, Hardcase. And they had hired an MMA fighter to basically do a trailer. It was kind of like a music video, it was maybe 3 to 5 minutes long. It's on YouTube. You can go look it up if you want to. And I walked up to it, and there was one guy standing there behind the booth. And I walked up to him and I was like, hey, that's shot on 35 millimeter. It's not shot on 16. Because I'd spent 3 years shooting movies on 16 millimeter and I could tell the difference in the film grain. And he said, how can you tell 16 from 35? And we started talking back and forth about film. And that guy was the director. And so, what a great relationship to strike up. And so, he actually is the one that offered me a job. He went to the partners at Malibu and he said, here's this guy who 100% knows comics and he 100% knows film. And we need to hire him in our film department. And their model at that time was that they were going to, they made one project like this. It was called Firearm, based on the Ultraverse character. And so the idea was we're going to make a low budget film that's going to go straight to video and it'll go to 2020 video and Blockbuster. And that area of, straight to video was thriving. And those video cassettes were selling through the roof. So we're going to sell into that channel and we're going to sell into the comic book channel. and the firearm was made, produced, whatever, and then didn't work. And so it basically commercially failed. But they were building this film division to do that, and they hired me to do it. And basically, I showed up at the company. I had extricated myself from whatever temp job I had at the time, working at Disney in the home entertainment department as an assistant or something like that. And I go to Malibu, and I come in the first day, and they go, "Well, we've eliminated the film division, and we're putting you in the marketing department." Now, you need to understand, Kent, my shoulder, I have hair down to here. Okay. This is the grunge era. I moved to LA from Austin. Okay. So I do not look like a marketing guy. Right. And
Yep.
so, and I certainly didn't sort of, that was never a career objective, shall we say. So you had just thrown me to the wolves. And I thought, I'm going to be a hack, and I'm sitting here going to sell people things they don't want. And I don't want to be the sales pitch guy. Right. And what I discovered is I loved it. And the really exciting thing to me was the talent that was at the company. And so, just to rattle off some names, Steve Gerber was writing, he had created Howard the Duck. And I firmly believe that Howard the Duck is one of the most innovative comics that was ever published. And I think it's the precursor to Vertigo. And anything that isn't superhero amongst Marvel and DC, Howard the Duck was the first non-superhero book that sort of showed them it could be commercial. It wasn't a war book or romance or horror or something. So Gerber was a genius. Steve Englehart was there, who was one of the biggest superhero writers. Did a lot of seminal Batman comics like Laughing Fish that are celebrated today. There was Barry Windsor Smith, and I know that we need to cover a Barry Windsor Smith story, which I'll be happy to share.
On Barry, the title of this video is the Barry Windsor Smith anecdote. So
All right, no, I'm in. I'd watch 5 hours of Barry Windsor Smith anecdotes.
Yeah,
But
me too.
there, Howard Chaykin, one of my favorite creators of all time, Walter
Yeah.
Simonson, Kevin McGuire. I mean, the list of creators that I had followed slavishly and loved their work went all the way down my arm. Norm Brayfogle. I mean, there was just legends everywhere you looked. Gil Kane. I used to like Gil Kane used to come in the office. This is the co-creator of Hal Jordan, the Silver Age Green Lantern, and it's like swing a dead cat, and there's some Hall of Famer that's rolling up on you that you get to talk to. So, one of my favorite. I can't tell that Howard Chaykin story. So
There's probably a lot of those you can't tell.
oh well, that's I moved about 7 years ago, and I was pulling stuff out of the garage, and I found a document from that time period, and it was a sheet of paper, which was I had done my top 10 favorite Howard Chaykin sayings.
Yeah.
And number one was I spent a year with that guy one weekend.
That's awesome. That's
Which
awesome.
in context, that's in reference to having to do a convention with someone you don't like. So anyway, let me know when I do the Barry story. So
Yeah. No, that's good. You can throw that in anytime, because I was gonna go back. This is still like Malibu era, right? So
yep.
like I there was Howard Chaykin was doing Power and Glory.
Yes.
Was that of it? And then
Yep.
Star Slammers, Walt
Yes.
Simonson. Was that? I didn't know that existed until much later. So that was that after the graphic novel, right? And he owned the rights to it.
Yes.
Okay. And so then they did. It was was it a sequel? I don't remember. And you didn't know about this.
I'm a little rusty, but I think if off the top of my head, I think he completely redid it. I think he retained much of what it was, but he did the second draft.
But yeah, I got to go find that. If you've read that, put a note in the comments, and don't forget to like this video. But yeah, no, that's the one I had to look up because I was doing my research, and I was like, I gotta find that because I love Star Slammers, that graphic novel, and then Power and Glory I was buying when that came out. I remember that one, and because I love Chaykin too. He's like American Flag. I used to teach college level comic books, and I would show American Flag as like lettering and layout and everything. Like you could just teach, it's a textbook,
Well, we should take 2 seconds and say, that's a book that if you don't know it and you're interested in anything of the craft of comics, you need to
Yeah,
check it down. And the context for that book is when that book hit, it was thunder. And everybody in the business sat up and took notice because the synthesis of the subject material, the approach, the way that that book foresaw the future, and it's an adventure story that has a hint of satire. It's very self-deprecating. Its sophistication was through the roof, and this is well before Vertigo. I mean,
yeah,
in a context, you need to remember that like Alan Moore did fill-in issues of American Flag. American Flag was such a big deal that Alan Moore was happy to play second fiddle just to be a part of the band,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And so, it's a real lost classic. And in the page layout from an art perspective, one of the things that I think my understanding is that Howard invented the inset panel.
huh,
So wrap your head around that. I
yeah,
mean,
that's
that's a
crazy.
huge innovation. And in particular, the way that pages are composed. I spent a lot of time at Malibu sitting next to Howard while he did portfolio reviews. And it's given me a graduate degree in comics
Yeah,
because the way that the pages turn, where you're ending your scene, how you're telling the action. I mean,
yeah,
the stuff that in Flag is unbeatable. It's
yeah.
just it's just a high watermark.
That's I can't think of anybody I would want to have a portfolio review less than from Howard.
Oh,
Because he would be so brutally honest. I don't know that I could take it.
oh yeah, no, he absolutely
Great,
shredded people. It was
but
it was it was brutal.
totally worth it. You couldn't pay for a better one, probably.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, Howard worked with Neil Adams back in the '70s, and Neil is pretty famous for doing that sort of tough review as well. And I think
yeah.
Howard is of that school. I mean, you do not come to Howard lightly.
Yeah, no, I remember the only time I've ever showed my art for professional review is Scott McCloud came into town to our shop one time, and I showed him this little short story I'd done, and Scott McCloud, sweetest guy, like so nice, you know what I mean, unassuming, like, but I could see he was just trying to be nice to me, but he's like, you really need to start work on drawing your hands, and I was like, you're
Oh,
right, oh my God, but he was so right, and then I just drew hands forever after that, but. Um,
well,
Anyway,
it's
I don't
good.
know. Apropos of nothing, except Scott McCloud's a nice guy.
Scott McCloud is a
And
genius.
Howard, I would be scared to show my art to.
Yeah,
Even to this day, I don't want him even reading my books.
yeah,
So
yeah.
don't read them.
So I'll tell you my Barry story. I
Yeah.
really loved Barry, and one of my jobs at Malibu was to handle conventions. And during this time period, comics were selling through the roof. Spawn was selling 1 million copies a month, and comics were very profitable. And so people were, I was flying all around the country doing these conventions and handling creators. And there was, money being thrown around to take care of the creators and fly them out and put them up. And during this time period, I was able to hang with Barry. And I think Barry really saw me as like a young punk, with my grunge look and my attitude. And we were in LA, and I've forgotten the occasion, but he and I got together to have some sushi on Melrose. And we'd always kind of gotten along. Part of it was I never really took any crap from him, and Barry is is very opinionated and sharp often in his opinions, and that sort of thing from people that are older than me during this time period I was totally used to, and so it wasn't intimidating um, to tell it tangentially to tell you the kind of way that I dealt with my heroes.
Mhm.
When Howard Shakin came in to do a video for a convention, um, he was talking about himself and he said, I always try to be the best dressed guy in the room. And I was the marketing guy interviewing him off camera. And I let him cook underneath the lights a little bit uncomfortably. And then I said, so what happened? So I'm a smart
What
ass.
are you doing?
Yeah, yeah. I just, um, and what was great about Howard was he cocked his head and he kind of like shaded his eyes and he saw me and he was like, "Oh, so you're that guy?" And I was like, "Yeah, pretty much." And so with Barry, we would give and get, and
Yeah.
but the basically you have that moment where you both need to go to the restroom, and so I had shown up in an Astro Boy t-shirt, and for a lot of the audience, there's some context that's due, which is that Generation X really sort of popularized pop culture as fashion, and that was something that was very boundary breaking at the time.
Mm.
And it was unthinkable that you would wear an Astro Boy t-shirt. And so Barry kind of like when I showed up for dinner, Barry kind of gave me a dressing down of like, what are you doing with your life? What do you're coming in here in a t-shirt? Do you understand that you need to like go buy yourself a shirt and like it's Astro Boy, which is a kid's character, and that's embarrassing, and you're an adult man and all this thing, like really laid into me,
Yeah.
and I kind of sat there and was like, yeah, 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 old man, whatever. Right. And so we get up to go to the restroom, and this beautiful Japanese woman comes out of the ladies' room and she stops and she sees Astro Boy and she goes, oh, Astro Boy, and like just fangirls out on me. And after that, I was good with Barry, like all day
DC
long.
started wearing his
As
Suzuki shirts. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. He's just showing up in an Astro Boy t-shirt next time. But for whatever reason, like being third party authenticated by somebody that I think beautiful women accepting me was the key in
Right.
that particular scenario. So
Barry. Yeah, there's a I'm sorry I missed like I missed that by a few years. I'm so lucky to have been in the industry when I've been in and like the people I work with and everything too. And it's like there's just a few people like that I missed by like a few years where I was like, oh, I wish I would have loved to rub shoulders with those people, or seen Kirby at a convention or something, and then
I
but then
got
you think about like
I got
that's
to
the
meet
beauty.
him.
Yeah, I don't even want to hear about it.
Sorry.
I didn't ask you that question and I don't want to know.
Okay, well, I'm going to throw you a curveball that you're not ready for about another one of your heroes.
Yeah, okay.
So I went to the University of Texas, and you know who else went to the University of Texas who you love?
No, who?
Chris Ware.
Oh, yeah, he's that's a yeah, did you uh well, did he go to how long did he go there? What years was that? Was that before he was doing comics or the beginning? Like
It's before. It's actually part of how he got into it. So we
yeah,
had a we had a University of Texas is gigantic, 57,000 students. And
yeah.
so we had a newspaper which actually had like
Yes. Yeah.
real
Yeah.
circulation to it, And so they had students do comic strips, and he did a strip that he didn't name the character and he didn't name the strip. So to this day, I don't know to call it anything other than the potato head guy.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and so what would happen is now I was in the fine arts world. So this is 88, 89. Okay.
Mm.
And so I'm in the fine arts track, and they had student exhibitions. And I would go to the exhibitions, and Ware would do these huge paintings. And he would use his potato head guy. And I remember like there are these old West dolls that were usually made out of like rolling pins that you would hang on the wall, and
Yeah.
you would pull on strings and they would move.
Yeah, yeah. I know what
You know
you're
what I'm
talking
talking about?
about. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And so you see him in the museums. He made one of those with his character. And when you would pull the strings, he had scissors and he'd stab his own eyes out.
That's awesome. That's so
And
awesome.
then the other painting that I'll never forget is he did a conventional canvas painting, and it was basically a kitchen scene with a lamp above that put this sort of light down on top of a kitchen table, and his little potato head character was sitting there like really depressed, and then he had put a piece of metal behind the canvas, and then he had festooned it with refrigerator magnets, and on the refrigerator magnets was expressions. So like surprise with the eyebrows and furrowed with the anger. And across the top, he'd made a sign that said, "Please touch." And so you'd go up to the painting and you would change the expressions of the little potato head guy that was at the kitchen table.
Yeah, that's
So
awesome.
anyway, I never, I've seen him a couple times through the years, and I would say, I was at University of Texas, and I know whenever he's like, "Okay, when are you leaving?"
Yeah.
Wonderful guy, very kind. I don't think I own a Chris Ware comic that I haven't gotten autographed by him, but
Yeah,
you know,
no, I tracked down his first mini comic. It was like a full size comic, but the black and white. That's kind of hard to find or whatever. I found one at his show one time and had him sign it, and he wasn't happy that I had it, but it was like part of the. I kind of knew that he hated it, but I was like,
yep.
yeah, I get it. I was like, I hate my stuff too, but I sold so few of them that you can't even find mine. So that's the problem with you being successful.
Yep. People track down your stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
So, all right. So let's see. Where are we? So Malibu experience.
Right. You got
I,
pushed into marketing, right? And then didn't want to do it, but then you liked it. So then
yep.
what did you have like a plan? Like did you have a grand scheme of like what you saw yourself doing? Like a bigger plan?
Well, I wanted to work in the movie business.
Yeah.
And so, I sort of originally had an interest in directing. But what I found when I was in film school was that sort of corralling everybody and making it happen was incredibly draining,
Yeah.
and to almost to the point of dispiriting. And then when I moved out to LA, I just couldn't see, I wasn't a writer. And so I couldn't see how the only path I knew was become a hot screenwriter. And then you're so hot that you force them to let you direct it. And so I was like, I don't know how to become a director. And so I go to Malibu and I come out the other side. And at that juncture, I saw a path to work in the movie business, which was, well, if I control a piece of material, which is a comic book or something that somebody wants, then they have to put up with me as a producer. And the strategy was partner with an older producer who has done it and has a track record so they can shield me from all the mistakes that I'm going to make.
Yeah.
And then I'll sort of learn while I go. And that was the strategy. And, when I left Malibu, I was like, I got to get back in the movie business. I had this little detour, which was reading for Schwarzenegger, which I knew would be valuable. Uh, the big thing that I knew was if you're going to make it in the movie business, that my theory was you need to understand story. And there's a lot of people in film that don't understand story. And so I figured reading scripts for Schwarzenegger would help me understand story and get better at that. And I'd always been interested in story. I mean, I think that's something that you and I sort of have in common, which is the pretty pictures are incredible. And you and I are two guys that could break down why the pretty pictures are so incredible. But at the same time, we only really care about story. And one of the examples I'd give is, Watchmen is this huge hit forever, right? Always will be. And Dave Gibbons is a complete and utter master of the form. There is not a single comic book artist that you can find that will not gush nonstop about what a brilliant draftsman he is. And his storytelling is staggering. But at the same time, he's not Jim Lee, right? He's not the flashy, cool, hot dude. You can name the list of all the accomplished artists that are that. And the thing is it's the synthesis of Gibbons's craft with Alan Moore's script that creates something that's bigger than either one of them. And that's why it's such a massive accomplishment.
Yeah. No, that's what's funny. What's interesting to me too is like as as an editor, like in comics, uh, this last couple of years is the first time I've ever worked I've been writing screenplays and working with a producer, and then until I did that, I didn't really realize what a producer did other than put their name on it, take some credit, and there's a lot of them. So I was like, okay, I was like, I don't know, I think I get what that's about, but not until I worked with my producer at Dark Horse, and then working with him, I was like, dude, you could edit comics. Like
Like,
you're like the best of the best editors I've worked with. So being a producer to me is like you're doing the editor role in comics, and like my favorite editors, uh, they could be producers, you know, because it's all about story and storytelling, and it sticks out to me when we first had the meeting or whatever, one of the few meetings we had with Keanu and we're working on Berserker, and you were talking about, we are just talking about how you introduce characters and origin and story and everything in limited space. And you referenced All-Star Superman, Grant Morrison's All-Star Superman, how like he tells the whole origin of Superman in those first couple pages. And then I was like, I love that. All-Star Superman's is the best Superman story. And then, but then it was like my ears perked up because we hadn't worked together that much. But I was like, who's this? Who's this Ross guy? How's he referencing that? But it's cool. I can recognize it is. I can recognize somebody that knows story and appreciates story, and like for you to pick that out or whatever as like a stellar piece of storytelling. Um, this is something that whatever. I don't know what I'm saying. Just I guess I'm
well,
kissing your butt or something.
I
But
just I think it's the only thing that matters. And
uh,
it's like we can on some level ego trip in comics and try to create something that's about us. But the industry will forget it. And when you create a great story, people do not forget it, and that lives with them. And that's the goal, and my thing is I've done enough, I'm not a kid. And it's like, don't I want to do that? Why are we focusing on anything but what matters? Right? Let's focus on doing great material. And you get a group of people together that you really believe in and you back them, and then you try to provide support. And I think that comes editorially, that comes from a marketing perspective, it comes from design. Design is so important, that.
yeah,
You are a expert at design. And you've got to deliver on all those elements, not to get lost in a tangent, but it's like, I think in comic book publishing, you can pick up books and tell that the publisher is a year behind the design curve. And I think it hurts the experience and it hurts the commercial viability of the product. And I think on a marketing basis, if you're not paying attention, the business changes. And I think the business changes like every 2 years. I
yeah,
think it iterates super fast, and you got to pay attention. And to me, from my end as a publisher, what I want to do is I believe that we can deliver at the highest level across every single category. And all the way to the Hollywood end, where it's like we've got a Netflix deal. And it's like, to me, in the TV business, Netflix is providing such tremendous value to everyone, and it's a quickest path that a creator has to getting their content made. And so it's like, how do we deliver at every level the best that we possibly can? And my staff laughs at me because I'm relentless, but to me, it's like, what are we doing? I don't want to just skate through life. Like, life goes by fast. And if you're not paying attention and you're not engaged, you'll be sitting there going, what happened?
yeah,
And I'd rather go down swinging. I'd rather give it everything and try to tell the best stories, and it didn't click. And then I go, well, I tried, you know?
yeah. No, that's what it's interesting to me because marketing, uh, I would love to be in marketing. Like in another life, I would be in marketing, you know, because I love the idea of, to me, it's there's a layer of mind management that's just the idea of marketing, you know, and there's something
Yeah.
about, I love how the human brain works, and I'm just fascinated by how human behavior, and I think marketing is that it's like psychology applied, you know, and I think like it makes sense that you would like it. I like it. I think it's because at the end of the day, like, because we both care about this the story the most, right? The story is the thing that matters the most. Well, if you don't market it correctly, if you don't get it in front of people, it doesn't matter how good the story is. If there's the cover's bad or the logo's dumb or you know what I mean, or people don't hear about it, then it doesn't matter how good it is. And that's what I realized over a career is like it's hard. You still got to get it noticed. You know, it doesn't matter. I can pour everything I got into it. It doesn't matter unless people notice it. You know, and to me, um, yeah, the movies and all that stuff is an extension of the story and also just getting people's eyeballs on it. Like I love the idea of optioning stuff and getting the all of Hollywood in the movie, all that stuff happening because all what it does is it gives more eyeballs to the books and the
Yep.
story, you know, and to me that's like the end goal. Um,
Yeah.
but I was going to ask you, so Boom, tell me the origin of Boom. Like how did Boom start? And because I don't know anything. I don't know. I
Sure.
don't know. Yeah, but yeah,
Well, well, to rewind to, so I was publishing Atomica, and the deal that I had with Atomica was that the guys behind Atomica, Dave Elliott and oh, for heaven's sakes, I love him dearly. I've forgotten his name. It's Gary Leach. So Gary Leach, you would get a kick out of this. Gary Leach drew Miracle Man. So
yeah,
you know, I worshipped Gary Leach's work.
yeah,
So then my deal with those guys was that they had projects that they wanted to do, which I would finance. And then there were projects that I wanted to try as this little experiment, put my toe in the pool. And so one of them was Hero Squared, which was I called up Keith and I said, "Hey, um, I love the Funny Justice League. Let's do the Funny Justice League." And Keith was like, "Yeah, but we can't. It's owned by DC." And I was like, "Yeah, just file the names off, and there'll be one that's clearly Guy Gardner and one that's clearly Batman, and we'll just go do the Funny Justice League." And Keith was like, "No, we're not doing that." And I was like, "Okay, well, can you give me a book that's the Funny Justice League in that style?" And he's like, "Well, I'll try to think about it." So he calls me back up, he pitches me Hero Squared, and he says, "If we're going to do this, you got to call J.M. DeMatteis and figure out how to get him on board." So I called up Mark and I made my pitch, and they jumped in. And I did Hero Squared under Atomica's banner. And then the other book that I did was Zombie Tales. And so the joke with Zombie Tales is, guess what it's about, right? So this is post Walking Dead, but this is before the show. So this is 2005. And the thing about Zombie Tales is it's me asking all of my friends to bail me out. Okay. So this is like Keith writes one story and then he draws another story. I roped my wife, who's a screenwriter, into writing Keith's story. Okay.
yeah.
And then I got my buddy John Rogers, who created the show Leverage, to write one story. And I just basically traded in all my favors to do this 48-page anthology of zombies. And it sold. And then by then, Keith had talked me into starting Boom, and I took Zombie Tales with me and Hero Squared with me. And Keith, the whole thing with Keith was, you know, I thought like my original dream of Boom was LA's expensive. I probably can't buy a house on the money I'm going to make off of comic book publishing. And so probably what I need to do is move. I need to read one of those articles on the web, which is like best places in the United States to live cheap, right? And then I need to go move there.
St. Louis.
All right, all right.
It's perfect for a comic book career when you're starting.
Well, there you go. All right, so the secret's out. Expect the
Yeah,
entire comic book industry. Everyone's leaving Portland. They're coming to
that's
St.
right.
Louis. So and so my vision was like at the time, two big influences on me was Larry Young with AIT Planet Lair, which was very much a cottage company that Larry was doing everything. It was like, how are you smaller than Top Shelf? Your AIT Planet Lair, right? And the other inspiration was Oni. And I knew Joe Nosmak, who started Oni, and Bob back in the day.
Wow.
And when they put out their first issue, I remember it vividly. I mean, I remember going to the Oni booth when Greg Rucka put out Whiteout #1, and like he had no line, and nobody knew who Greg Rucka was, and what a talent he is. And so they were, with Whiteout, they were publishing genre material, and they were doing it as an independent, and that was really interesting to me. And AIT Planet Lair was the same way. And so I thought it was going to be this little cottage, maybe I'd do 4 monthlies, like when I'm clicking on all cylinders. And just for everybody's entertainment, we're doing, 20 plus at Boom. So it got a little out of hand. But one of the things I'm lucky with Boom is when I started, there I have always been blessed because the phone rang off the hook and people paid attention and cared and um, contributed and helped and supported. And it's always sort of gotten bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's kind of attained a life of its own because of that support and interest. And so it just sort of, I just kind of followed it.
Yeah. No, that's what the beauty to me of this industry is, that it's small enough that if you're not a jerk, and you can create this community. Well, I mean, that's kind of what happened, right? Is like you meet people and you get along and you have fun. Everybody has a shared love of the thing, which is
Yep.
comics. And so then it draws you together, and then and you can build on that and everything. And that's what I feel like. The older I've gotten, the more I've bumped into people or worked with people that I didn't know at all. We had so much fun working together. And you just keep working together. It's like the people I
Yep.
work with now it's because we love the same thing, and we are nice to each other.
Right.
And it's there's like no pressure. This is the other thing I was gonna bring up when you were talking about like the choices you made, and like where you're gonna live, and like considering things outside of the industry, right? Like how do you live? What's your house? How much is the house going to cost? LA is expensive. That's why I felt like I'm going to circle back to the interview that we did. But one of the important choices you make when you're trying to make it happen is the stuff outside of comics. Like, don't live in a place that you can't afford, because then you have to make business choices that will affect the work you do. Like I didn't have to get Marvel and DC work because I'm not living in New York and I'm
Yep.
not living in LA. I don't need to pay $1,000 a month for a tiny studio apartment. I can own a house, and then there's no money pressure for me because I live in a place that's affordable and I can just do my own thing and I don't have to make those choices. So I think that's an important thing. Like the business part that you do is like that's the part I had to learn later. So like I love hearing you talk about it because I wish I had known a lot of this stuff sooner, and then you just figured out along the way.
Well, I'm not sure how much I actually knew and how much I did learn on the fly. So
Yeah, right.
I appreciate it.
No, that's good. Uh,
So what else do you got?
those are all the things I had. I was hoping you would just talk and talk and talk.
How'd I do? Did I talk and talk and talk enough?
No, you did good. I got some anecdotes, and yeah, I don't know. It's so now let's just check on you now. Like, are you doing? Is there like a bigger goal? Is there something? And I know like it's weird in the industry working now. You can't spoil things or you can't talk about things in the works and stuff. But is like uh, like I feel like I'm at the there's three stages to a career, right? I feel like I'm in the third, like the beginning, middle, third of my third stage, and
Well,
so I
well,
just wonder
you're
where you think you're at right now. Like,
well, you're in a place where you have worked long and hard to do. Now you're at the place where you can do what you want to do.
yeah,
You don't have to take work from anybody.
yeah,
And I think that's why you think of it as the late stage. Because I
yeah,
bet you if we go back and look at your work 20 years from now, 30 years from now, you're just getting started. The work that you're going to do that's laying out in front of you is going to be some of the best of your career, which is quite, it's saying something. You've done some really exceptional work. And so, but I think that for you, it's like you've climbed the mountain to get to the place where it's no longer, how do I pay my bills with what I'm doing? Now, I'm full blown crazy. Like, you don't understand how crazy I am. You know, I I really don't see limitations. And so, the thing last year for me was when we did the Keanu Kickstarter, right?
yeah,
And and that, there was a lot of people in the business that got their feathers ruffled by it because the perception was that Kickstarter is for little smaller creators. And what I always knew was that the project would bring people to Kickstarter, and and we see through our data that it did,
yeah,
and that those people would stick around and spend money on smaller creators. Now, I can't track that,
Yeah.
And
Oh,
so maybe it didn't happen, but I know that the data on the Kickstarter stuff was, it was like the year before was a $16 million, and then we participated and it went from 16 to 22. It's not because of us, but that's just tells you how much growth there is in the category. And I don't think it cannibalizes, I think it's additive. But to pivot back to how crazy I am is, I sit there and I go, this is not, this platform is not, you can crowdfund on it. Clearly it's a crowdfunding platform, but what it really is pre-sales. And to me it was a device to sell comic books to people who don't read comics.
yeah.
And sort of everybody's toes curled when I talked to them about that, you know and I was like, guys, you don't get it. Like, this is like a godsend. This is something. And I'll tell you, as a guy that, we have our book distribution through Simon and Schuster, and so I know more about warehousing and order patterns and print runs than I've ever wanted to know. And I'm telling you, to get it done at Amazon is so hard. It's possible. It's super complicated, or you could just do one click on Kickstarter and it gets it all done.
Yeah.
And we did that with Berserker. It was a huge success. And then we just launched Power Rangers this year in January. And to me, it's like, this is an exciting platform that can be integrated into the way comics are made. And if done properly, can be a tool that reinforces comic book retailers and supports them. And is there a better weapon for the creators? The creators participate in what we do, and don't we want them to win as well?
Yeah, no, you don't have to, you don't have to sell me on it, because I know we had these conversations early on when we were talking about launching on Kickstarter, and I was like, because I had done a couple,
Yep.
and then we had talked, and I was like, look, everything you said is right. We just got to make sure people understand that, because like a perception can be one thing, and it's like it's something else, and I've had my experience with Kickstarter just the last few years, like I launched I've launched one and it was successful, then another one, and then third, and that's Berserker one is like my fourth one. And in that time, like I've learned so much about distribution and like the business side of comics and stuff that I didn't know before. And I'm launching this company. I'm curious. I want to hear your origin story, because I'm launching Bad Idea with Dinesh and Warren from Valiant. Like we're doing this thing this year, and now I'm seeing it from the inside, and like how hard it is. Like it's so much work. Like you're talking about, you're crazy. You have to be crazy to publish. There has to be that like crazy gene in you that's like you don't you don't it's like a careless disregard for anything practical, you
Yes.
know and I there's something about that that really appeals to me, because it's just choosing comics as a career is a careless disregard for anything practical. Like,
Yep.
because people don't there's not a lot of uh, 50 or 60-year-old people that make comics their career or whatever and retire, you know what I mean? There's just not that many of them,
Yep.
and if they're doing something else or whatever it is. So like to me, the publishing and the Kickstarter and like learning how to launch a company and the business side of it, to me, is, I hope creators watch this and listen to you and just at least understand, like, you need to 50% of it is making the comics, 40% of it is making comics, 60% of it is like getting a comics to people, getting them to hear about it and see it, and I think that's, people just forget, artists, creators forget that part of it, or forget
Yep.
how important that part is.
Understandable. It's beyond their purview usually. Now, to pivot back to how insane I am. So when we launched Kaboom, which is an imprint dedicated to publishing for kids, we were told directly by Diamond, um, kids don't read comics. Why are you doing this? And this is well before the boom in kids comics that happened now. Now,
Yeah.
I don't think we did that. I think we contributed in a small way. There were
Hmm.
a number of other people, obviously Jeff Smith, obviously, the Diary of a Wimpy Kid. There was a ton of things, Raina, all that stuff really made a difference. But, I'm the guy that sits there and goes, I started reading comics when I was 6, and they made comics that are appropriate for 6-year-olds to read. So if we're not going to make comics that are appropriate for 6-year-olds, how do we expect to get the next generation of 6-year-olds?
Yeah.
And there just wasn't anybody that encouraged me. It was like the Kickstarter thing. Everybody was like, "This is a terrible idea. What are you doing?" Right. And things like Lumberjanes were like that as well, where it was like Lumberjanes, it's hard to explain before Lumberjanes how the climate was not receptive to an all-girl book with all kid protagonists, you know, in that art style, done with that kind of storytelling, um, and it just caught like wildfire, and we sold millions of copies. And it's a for me, I just looked at the book and I just believed in Shannon and I believed in the project. And I just, again, I'm in a weird place where I go, why not? Right. And there's all these people that say, well, that's not how it's done. And I just don't care how it's been done before. I often I'm more from a perspective of that probably means that it shouldn't be done that way anymore. And so I find the structure on a business basis, it's like, how do we iterate and how do we go into the future, and why are we satisfied with the way it's been done? I mean, we can't be satisfied with that. It's like there's no business that stays the same,
Yeah.
right? So why
Yeah.
would we expect to? And if you don't change with the times, you're gonna be left on the side of the road, And if Boom leaves me on the side of the road, I'm screwed, right? So we got to pay attention and we got to update. You know?
No, that's it's funny because it reminds the story you told about the marketing guy asking or not liking you because you're like, why are we doing blah blah blah. I was like, I relate to that, and it's funny because I feel like we get to the same spot, and but I'm not coming from the the side. To me, that all makes sense. I'm coming from the side of I'm just bored. Like, and it's the same thing though. It's like, well, it's always done this way, or this is what works, or this is what happens. I was like, I get bored so easily. I don't want to do, I don't, if I'm not a little scared doing the thing, then I feel like I'm not, I don't, I'm, then I'm bored by it, and I don't want to do it. I feel like there's like whether it's business and marketing or in running a company or telling a story. It's like there was a point where I was writing it, DC and Valiant and doing my own thing all at once, and then like all the pieces fell into place, and I was like, oh, I get like there's just not a formula to writing a monthly book, but like it became easy somehow. And I don't that's like the dumbest self brag. It's not a self brag at all. It's actually the worst thing that could happen. Because I was like, oh, this is easy. I can write a thing that will work, and I know it will work. And then I was like, ugh, that's why I stopped doing the DC books. I was like, I gotta get back to I need to make myself nervous, and I feel like I like that idea of like just like the Kickstarter thing with Keanu and everything. It was kind of nuts, and it sort of ruffled feathers and but it's like it got people to look at the book. There's people reading that book now that have never picked up a comic. They're fans of Keanu, or they heard about it from wherever, like a different source, and now they are going to pick up the book, and then what that's shown a light on for me too is like the oddness of our industry, about how we go into a comic shop every week and pick up these books, and then asking like a layman, whatever, like a normal person. This is horrible to say, but asking them to do that, or I was like, that's so odd. Like it's especially in today's day and age where you can just order anything online, have it in 2 days. Like we can't do it that way. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's what's interesting about our business is I think there's a big chunk of it that is conservative, and I don't mean politically. What I mean is they like, sort of yesterday and the way it was done yesterday. And I get it, but I am consumed with how do we do the next thing. And you ask me what do I have in my magic bag, and I'll tell you it's just a whole lot more of that. You know, it is, COVID was a really incredible moment for us. You know, um, the shutdown happened, we held on to staff, everybody else in the business cut staff. I fought tooth and nail to not let anybody go. And we kept our creators working. And most of the business had the creators go pencils down.
Yeah.
And that's financial suicide. Like everybody during COVID would understand a work stoppage or cut of staff. But I felt an obligation and a responsibility to the people that depend upon us for their paychecks to continue going. And what I knew was that people, it was massive uncertainty, and in uncertainty is opportunity. And so, the analogy is this is a game of musical chairs. At some point, the music's going to stop. And if you're not thinking about when the music stops, when it comes time to sit down in a chair, the chair's gone, right? So you have an order, which is pre-COVID. COVID hits, chaos, uncertainty, you don't know what's going on. And I was like, what we're going to do is we're going to bowl our way through this, and we're going to land on the other side with certainty, intentionality, focus. We're going to talk to the fans, we're going to talk to the retailers, and we're going to be consistent. And that's the only way to survive. That if we hedge our bets and we go 1 foot in, 1 foot out, we're going to get crushed. You're either in or you're out. And so we doubled down on everything. And like one of the big things we did during COVID was we had a James Tynion graphic novel in our back pocket that was supposed to come out in November. I called James and I was like, what if we serialize this as comics? Now, James, I was going to say, I think he might be as crazy as me. Okay. Which is, an august company, Mr. Kindt. So, no negativity intended. But James is pretty crazy. And I called him up. I said, let's serialize the book. I went to Philip Sablick, our president of publishing, and I said, we need to serialize this. And he said, you can't. And I said, why not? And he said, there's not enough time to submit to previews, have it get printed in previews, have that get distributed, circulate, gather orders, and then go to FOC to be able to get it done. And I was like, well, let's just skip previews. Now, no comic book has ever done that. So we called Diamond and we were like, we're going to skip previews. And they were like, well, it's your suicide. So if you want to skip previews and go straight to final order digitally, then that's your jam. And the punchline is we had 5 days to market the book. And when we got our final orders, it was the best-selling original we'd ever done. And part of it is I knew that it was so crazy that people would pay attention. And there wasn't a lot of product coming out. And so
say like you see, that's the whole thing is like you see a gap, right? There's a thing missing, and it's like, well, it's the opportunity, rather than the like negative. And yeah, no, it's totally, you can apply that to everything. And like the whole business.
It's your career.
Yeah, yeah, in a career, and yeah, you just see the spot that needs filling, and then fill it with, people want it. So no, I had the same thing. I ended up doing so many Zoom calls and just like because it was pencils down all over the place, and I have artists and collaborators now I work with, so I felt like in some way I felt responsible. I was like, well, I got to make sure everyone's getting paid, like stuff is in the middle or just starting. And I was like, well, and then I just started I felt like I'm old enough. I've been in the industry long enough. I have to take more of a role of not a publisher, because I still like creating. I can never not do that part of it, but I wanted to make sure that creators are taken care of and sort of like take over a little bit of that role and help with business part of it that a lot of like young creators don't have it. We didn't take business classes in school, so it's like we had to learn it on the fly. I've had 20 years of trying to figure it out. So I tried to help everybody as much as I could and get going. And to Dark Horse's credit, they ended up coming in and helping us out a lot too. But
That's great.
Yeah,
Dark Horse is a great company.
Yeah, no, I've been lucky. I've worked with you and Mike Richardson and Dinesh and Bob and I've learned, the thing is I've learned to keep my mouth shut and listen to what everybody's saying and watch what they're doing. Like I don't know. I didn't take courses in this. I don't know what I'm doing, but I look around and I'm like, okay, that guy totally walked into a landmine, not going that way. This guy noticed what he's doing. That worked. I was like, I'll just copy that. Like, I'll be original in stories, but I'm gonna just use what works in business because I'm such a novice at it.
Well, look, it's good creator advice to pay attention, and
Yeah.
to be paying attention to what works and what doesn't, and avoiding landmines. There's a lot of creators that don't pay any attention to that at all, and they're good folks that go down because they stepped on a third rail. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's the business part of it you gotta think about or you won't be able to do the art part. You gotta do the art, but I don't know. Yeah, you know what's going on. But it's great because my daughter's 17 and and I she's so talented. She paints better than I ever have painted or ever could paint at this point, already at 17.
Paintings I've seen on Facebook are amazing.
Yeah, I can't tell you, and the way her mind works, she builds furniture. It's funny because when you were talking about Chris Ware, I was like, it kind of reminded me, she can do everything and she knows how to do it all and she's interested in all of it. And but she's going to college next year and I was like, just, I was like, if you're gonna do art, she's double majoring in entrepreneurship and art, you know. So I was like, good. That's if I was gonna prescribe something to any comic book creator, it's like do both. You got to do both, because it's one thing to do art, you'll be happy, but you'll be super poor and wondering how you're gonna pay rent. Do the other side too.
Well, look, I think another piece that's worth talking about, and now I'm going to flip the camera on you, that I mean, I think some of the projects you're doing on Kickstarter, you've always been a self-starter and you've always done it all, right? And so there's a way, I always tell people if I was starting Boom now and Kickstarter existed, and when I say Kickstarter, I generally mean digital platforms, right?
Yeah,
So some people are always like, Indiegogo. I'm like, I haven't done anything on it. I don't have any plans to. I don't know the platform. I'm sure it's great. Patreon, all these different things that exist, and not limited to those three. You know, you're building, like when you do that stuff on Kickstarter, you're building a direct digital relationship with your audience, and you're getting an email base. And
yeah,
I just think that if you're a creator, it's like go do your own comic, make it a short 20-page comic, kickstart it for $1, do it, deliver, build an audience, right? And then email
yeah,
them and go, I'm doing another and I'm doing another, or do a web comic that is supported by Patreon. Or it's like, it's insane the amount of support that you can get. And, it doesn't require a lot of imagination to poke around a little bit on the web and see how you can get support.
yeah. No, that's what's crazy now about breaking into comics today is so different. Like I had to hand deliver stuff to editors back in the day, and now it's like I was like, what? You don't need to break in. It's like you're like 60 seconds from breaking in. Just post it. You know, it's like you don't at this point you don't need a publisher to break in. Publishers still serve a role at everything, and but to break in and to build your name and your work or whatever, you don't need anybody, and
Yes.
that's so exciting to me. That it's even better now than it's ever been. But
And let's get down to brass tacks. I mean, look, I'm a publisher, so there's virtues to publishing. Okay,
yeah,
so
yeah. I'm not saying we don't need publishers.
you're not,
Yeah,
I'm not taking the smack talk at all. The thing is, what I want to point out is, I have an infrastructure at the company. So I have a design department, I have a marketing department, I have an accounting department. I've got an operations department because somebody needs to know who the different printers are, who's got a good quote. If the box is in transition, where is it? Is it Simon and Schuster? Is it at Diamond? Is it on a truck in Ohio somewhere? Right.
yeah,
Well, that's a lot of people. And so when we go to publish a comic, I have to do a projection that's accurate about how you get paid and how everybody in those departments get paid. And that's a lot of mouths to feed. And it's got to go in wholesale, right? And so it's got to get a markup from a retailer. And the thing about the digital landscape is you get all the money,
yeah,
right? And you're the creator. And
yeah,
so that's, to me, it's like you don't have to pay ops, you don't have to pay marketing, you don't have to pay editorial, you don't have to pay all these folks. Now, if you can't do that, which heaven knows there's a lot of people that can't, and the majority of them can't, and I'm not casting aspersions, right? A publisher is an excellent solution. But
Yeah.
if you can do it, if you can pack a box, take an order, do some customer service with outraged fans, understand how to, request a quote from a printer. If you
Yeah.
can do that, then, the sky's the limit.
Yeah, no, no. My very first Kickstarter was the mind management book and record, which I actually uh I love Dark Horse. When I pitched I pitched them a five-year monthly book and they approved it. But I pitched them that they're like, well, maybe you can go ahead and do that one. You go do that on your own if you want to. Like I was like, oh, okay. You don't want to do a crazy book and record. Uh, and then I did. I sourced everything, figured out how to get the records made. And I was like, oh yeah, this is why you didn't do it because it was really hard. uh,
Yeah, but for you as a creator, it was worth it, and it
yeah,
led
no
you to,
regrets. That's a thing that would never exist without Kickstarter, you know. And it's like that's the beauty of it is if you have an idea, you can do it at this point.
right. Well, and the thing that's so exciting about all this stuff is like, now we're talking about Kickstarter, and next year it could be something else.
Yeah, that's
And
what, to your point about being flexible, right? And always being like on the lookout for why are we doing this way? What are we doing? How are we doing it? You know, and being like, you just don't do it the same way every time. And especially now, it's like speed of light. Like things are changing daily, you know, like after the pandemic, like who knows what the landscape's going to be like. But yeah, you just got to be a little bit crazy and super flexible.
well, Matt Gagnon and I are huge Bruce Lee fans.
Yeah.
And what Bruce says is be like water.
Yeah, yeah.
And
You see the documentary was great.
it,
I don't know where it was, but
I can't get enough Bruce Lee stuff. General rule of thumb, but for the folks that don't know it, the point that he's making is water can go around things, and so it's infinitely flexible. But the key to it is a tidal wave is water, and so it's very powerful. And a flood can destroy a place. So just being flexible doesn't mean that you abdicate your agency. And so that ability to be tough and
yeah,
bulldoze things out of the way, and then also to go around when you need to. So,
yeah, right. You can take a punch, or you can wear a rock down. You know.
well, yeah, I mean, one of the greatest fighters of all time,
Yeah,
that was his mindset. So
yeah. That reminds me. I got the Criterion box set sitting on my shelf ready. I haven't watched any of them yet. I can't wait.
and dude, the context for all of that stuff I think is so mind blowing.
Yeah.
There's a great, and by the way, we're talking about docs for kung fu films and stuff. There's a great one on the Shaw Brothers on Netflix. You should check out too.
Oh yeah, I'll look for it.
Yeah, it's really
Yeah,
good.
cool. All right, man. I'm getting texts about dinner, so I might have to go.
All right, brother. Well, you take care of that family.
Yeah.
And I can't believe you let me talk this long, so I'm nothing but appreciative.
No, it's great. I wanted to pick your brain. This takes the place of like convention dinners that we haven't gotten to do like all year long, you know? It's like
Exactly.
really miss it. So,
Me too.
so
It was an honor, sir. I'll let you go be
yeah.
with the family.
All right, thanks.
All
All
right,
right,
we'll
I'll
talk
see you
soon.
later.